All right, real excited to talk to the next two gentlemen on the Sports Card Nation guest line. They are alumnus of this show already, but it's been 4 years since they've been on. I figured it's about time to catch up. And so, without further ado, back again, Zach and Porter Byrne. Welcome, gentlemen.
Hey, John, thank you.
Thank you.
It's good to be back. Yeah, 4 years. That just flew by, huh?
Yeah, it's crazy. When I looked at that, Zach, and seen that, I'm like, it doesn't feel like it. Like it does and it doesn't at the same time, if that makes any sense. And I'm like, I got to catch up. You're not going to find two nicer folks in the hobby. You guys sort of epitomize what I love about the hobby. So I figured 4 years, way too long. Let's bring you back. Porter's now older than me since I stopped counting birthdays, but I'm kidding. But Porter, like what grade are you in now, and how old are you since the last time we spoke, at least on the airwaves?
Yeah, so I'm going to be turning 13. Well,
Wow.
Actually, by the time this would drop, I did turn 13. And next school year, I will be going into 8th grade.
Yeah, middle schooler.
Yeah, and then the big high school coming up. Man, time flies. We must be having fun. So let's start off there. Like I said, it's been 4 years since you guys have been on. You guys are still active in the hobby. I'm still hanging on by a tread. You know, for you guys, what's happened the last 4 years? A synopsis since the last time you've been on.
Yeah, it's interesting. The last time we were on, I think you were having us as a father-son collectors. Myself, I got back into it during COVID, right? We lasted this in 2022, and our buddy Bo Thompson over at 1 Million Cubs, he joked there were a lot of people that came in during that boom. And I said at the beginning of last podcast, I said, we're here to stay. And it was true. Right. 4 years later, we still collect very similarly to when we first got in. We're low budget collectors. We love this hobby community. Mm-hmm. In fact, one of the ways that we got to learn a lot about the hobby, because when you take 30 years off from collecting and then you got a young man who's coming into the hobby, it can be intimidating. I think we've talked about that, right? Okay,
listen, it can be intimidating for adults.
Yeah.
And kids alike. So yeah, no, I get that. But yeah, go ahead.
Well, and so listening to Sports Card Nation, leaning on other people that were in the hobby, we really started to get collecting. Porter was first, and then I jumped in a little bit later. Yeah. But we just absolutely have, we've made more friends, but we still kind of collect the same, and we have the same, I would just say, positive outlook on, I don't care what your budget is, how old you are, you can find a way to hobby in this great community of ours.
Yeah. So what's changed? I feel like my collection, obviously it's grown a bit. I've expanded my likings and collecting habits. At shows, I've started dipping into the more quality than quantity stage a little bit. But I'm still usually just going through bargain boxes and finding out nice singles that I would like to have. We have since moved house, and this is our new card room.
Yeah,
so that's exciting.
John, this is actually great timing because we actually turned off. We trade a lot on TCDB, Trading Card Database. If you're new to collecting, highly recommend it, just for the checklist, but also just the ability to trade. And learn about all the cards that you didn't know existed. But we took a little bit of a hiatus from that because a lot of our collection was in boxes because we had this longer move delay. And where we are right now is in our new card room. And it's like we got a shot in the arm. We are running back into the hobby full steam. We were still picking up cards, but just not doing as many trades. We dropped usually about 2-3 videos a week on our YouTube channel, and we took a couple weeks off, and we're just excited to be back. So this was perfect timing for us to kind of say like, yep, let's timestamp 2022 when we first talked, and here we are in 2026 ready to go.
Yeah.
So did you, not to be nosy, and you don't have to, you can be as vague as you want to. Are you in a different city or same city, just different house?
Good question. No, same city, just closer to where Porter goes to school. And we had the opportunity to move to a place a little bit geographically where we wanted to be. I guess I can break this fourth wall down. Our old house, we never had a trick or treater. We were very, very rural. It was a long gravel road, and then you got to a 55-mile-an-hour highway. We wanted to give Porter the opportunity to hop on a bike. There's not a card shop within biking distance, but be able to ride downtown, see friends in the neighborhood. So that way he could have that really rural life and then a little bit of a, kind of a city life. So,
Yeah.
I mean, it's the best of both worlds for him. He doesn't have to lose any friends. He's not changing schools, but he gets to move. So it's painless for him.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. Like as a kid that had to change school a few times, that's always daunting for young individuals. So it's good to hear, Porter, you didn't have to make new friends necessarily. I mean, you can always make new friends in the same school,
Yeah.
but you
Yeah.
didn't have to make all new friends at a different school where you didn't know anybody. That can always be tricky and nerve-wracking time as someone, like I said, who's done it a few times. But now you didn't. And speaking of trick-or-treaters, Zach, I'm the opposite reason. I don't get trick-or-treaters at my house either, but for the opposite reason. I live on a very busy, like, main, I don't want to say highway, but it's a main thoroughfare. And so it's a busy street. And
Yeah.
it's actually, I'm in the suburb of Syracuse. And so this road basically connects, I'm in Liverpool, New York. This road basically connects the suburb of Liverpool to Syracuse. So there's very high traffic. And so we live literally on the street. So there's like 10 feet of lawn and then the road. And so not very safe for people, kids to trick or treat. So I've been here, I think almost 20 years now. My son was 6 when we moved here, and he's 26. So we've been here 20 years, and I think we've gotten 2 trick-or-treaters in 20 years, and not in the same year. So 18 years of 0, and then a couple odd years. And it's funny, we didn't have candy earmarked for Halloween, but we scrounged up some stuff we had in there.
I was going to ask.
But we weren't even expecting the one because we never get them. So that'll tell you I'm sort of the opposite, where I live on too busy of a street. Now we have something called the Nationals here, guys, and that's like not a card show, but a car show with like hot rods and old antique cars. And for that show, this road is like a main thoroughfare, and they go ripping up the road and doing burnouts. And I'm not a car guy, other than it's got to get me to point A to point B.
Mm-hmm.
So that's not my favorite week. It's not a whole week. It's not my favorite 4 days. Usually Thursday through Sunday. Sometimes it's even hard to get into my own driveway just with all the traffic. So yeah, it's crazy. I remember, funny story. I remember one year the Sports Card National, was the same week that they call the cars that show that's here, the Nationals.
Interesting.
Plural. So the Sports Card National was in Chicago one year, the same week that the Car Nationals were here locally in Syracuse. And so I got to go to that and avoid the Car Nationals and the headache that presents to us. And my wife's like, yeah, thanks for leaving me to myself during national weeks here. So funny story, but not a fun time unless you're in the cars. And people will sit up along and down the street, guys, in lawn chairs. It's a big spectacle. And it's crazy. It's not my thing, but some people enjoy that. Nothing wrong with that. Just like we enjoy sports cards, and some people, the car folks would probably think we're crazy. So
yeah,
I guess to each their own, as they say.
Well, it's funny. We're in Racine, Wisconsin, and in fact, one of the things that my wife liked about the new house was we have a little free library, and so we're a house of readers. My wife's big into books. We're big into cards. So just a couple days ago, we got permission. I said, what'd be really cool is if we put little packs of cards in there. Like, so we not only are there the books, but we always see kids out there, maybe some 15, 20 cards and little packs, and that'll be kind of fun way for us to kind of share not just the free books, but also some cards. Maybe we can get some more kids interested in collecting, and you never know what'll spark that bug.
Yeah, I love that. That's a great idea, and right, it's not going to hurt anybody. If they don't want it, they don't have to take it. If it piques their interest, and it's you never know where those random act of kindness goes, right? You never know who receives them, what it leads to, and it may seem like a simple thing, but it's like a ripple, right? Enough of those small ripples turn into a bigger one, and so love to hear that. Piggy, going into that for you, Porter, you obviously collect with your fellow classmates or kids in your school. Is that a big thing? Is it a lot of Pokemon? Is it Pokemon? Is it 50-50? How the kids that you go to school with, how would you describe them as? Are they collectors, sports, Pokemon, both? How would you answer that?
Yeah, so I feel like I'm in a minority group at school when it comes to collecting sports cards, per se. I mean, there are a couple kids in my grade who collect sports cards, but I don't really see anybody else at my school who does. But Pokemon, I would say, is bigger. A couple of my friends collect Pokemon, and I just feel like that's would be more popular than sports cards in a school standpoint.
Yeah, I would definitely say it feels like you go to a kid's birthday party or something, maybe they get something Pokemon related. More times than not, that's what they get versus the sports cards. Even the kids that aren't deep into Pokemon, it feels like they have an idea of what it's about, and they clearly know about it. I think, certainly with Pokemon, you're going to attract boys and girls, where I think with sports cards, right, wrong, or indifferent, it seems like it does attract more of the young men. And, we see that at shows too. There are some shows that are just Pokemon, some that are sports cards. Our buddy runs the Madison Pokemon show, and it's got a much diverse, much more inclusive environment, I think, for both boys and girls, where, sports cards, if you're not into sports, or maybe you don't have a dad or a brother or somebody get into it, it might just be some of the young men.
Yeah.
Do you feel like Pokemon? Well, let's start with this. Pokemon's really blown up. I don't know anything about it. I know I'm a show dealer. I've had people say, "God, it's a money maker. You should carry it." I don't like carry. I'm only speaking for myself here, guys. I don't like carrying something that I don't have a passion for or not knowledgeable. Now, like if I ever did it, it would strictly be a money grab, and that's not my style. I'm not going to, at 53 years old, I'm not, you don't change your style too much, maybe a little bit here and there, but so it's not my thing. If I joke that maybe if I ever opened a store again, which I don't have plans to, but if I ever happen to do that, I'd have someone kind of come in and stock that or run that kind of section for the store. But I like, again, speaking for me, I'm a sports guy, so I'm watching sports. I'm attending live sporting events, right? I like, when that production on the field, right, that performance on the field translates to the hobby, and I know we shouldn't hobby just for dollar signs, right? But that is a factor, right? When we pull something, most of the first question you hear is like, what's that worth? Or what's that going for? So it's part of the hobby, like it enough. And I always joke with, with folks in a playful sort of way. I'm like, how many home runs did Charizard hit last night, right? So that's my take. But it, like you said, it's a huge thing. And I think that's a great point you made too, Zach, is maybe it is more where it's open to females than the sports card hobby. Although I will say we've seen a lot of strides even on on that side of the aisle as well. But maybe it's more of an easier entryway, if you will.
Yeah, I think too. The positive side could be I don't. And again, you talked about how an athlete's performance can really bring in a fan. Last season the Bears did really, really well, and so it was easier to collect. Sometimes harder to find those Caleb Williams cards, where it wasn't hard to find a Trubisky card. But maybe on the Pokemon side, you don't have as much. I don't want to say flipping, but that impulse buy. If somebody has a 4 home run game, all of a sudden their cards are worth $25-$30 more than they normally would be. I don't think Pokemon would have that outside of like new releases. Something's new, it's going to be popular, but I bet you don't see that. What do we want to say? Maybe like forecasting or prospecting that you do with sports cards, where it's insane. Even if an athlete passes away, all of a sudden it's like, the price of the cards go up. And so it can be very interesting. In fact, right now, Murakami, right? If we wanted to find a base Murakami card as White Sox fans, it's a little bit more than we're used to.
Yeah, it's crazy. So I'll ask you this, Porter. You said like Pokemon's fairly popular in your school. Is it? Do you do it? Is it something you thought about, or it's just not your thing?
I've had family who's done it, like my cousin. He does Pokemon a little bit. I think it's fallen off for him, though, as he's gotten older. But I've never really had a thought in doing it. I mean, sometimes if somebody collects Pokemon, I'll definitely have a look at their collection if they offer that to me, because it's interesting to see what other people are collecting. But yeah, I've not really had an itch, if you will, to collect Pokemon at all.
Yeah, even if we've gone to a show and there's Pokemon dealers or cards, it's not drawn to you. I think because Porter started really loving sports and the history of baseball, like Jackie Robinson, looking back at all these old Bear football games. And I think that is part of what drives you to collect. There's just not that for Pokemon. You can't go back and feel those moments you had watching that player. But yeah, it is interesting when you see a Pokemon collector and a sports card collector. They're like talking at each other, like they're really excited with what they have, especially if it's at a party or something, and they're speaking a different language, but the collecting gene is there, so there's that commonality.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm always mindful to be like, whether Pokemon, which it's not my thing, I'm still respectful the fact that it is, right? Just like sports cards may not be their thing. What we're dealing with here, I'm sure it's happening in other places other than Syracuse, is like some of the shows, it's kind of 50-50 sports card dealers to Pokemon dealers. And, the collectors are kind of complaining because they're saying, half the show's not for me. And that's on both sides because it's a 50-50. So we're starting to see more what they call PokeFest here, which is a show that's all geared towards Pokemon. And it's Pokemon collectors and maybe a little comic books, but you won't see sports cards there. But we haven't really done that exclusively on the sports card side. And so some people are complaining like, hey, if the Pokemon folks can have their own show, why can't we do that in sports cards? And it's starting to occur. I know one dealer he isn't doing it necessarily like make it 100% sports cards, but because of the PokeFest shows, he's trying to like limit how many Pokemon dealers are there. So it's not, so those who do collect sports cards, they don't feel like it's a wasted trip or it's only half a show in a sense. So we're seeing that little bit. I think both parties get along, but there's some, I don't know if resentment's the right word, but it's getting a little competitive as far as, hey, I want to come to the show and see more of what I want to trade or purchase rather than have half the show be where I have to walk by a table because it's not for me, right? A Pokemon person's going to walk by my table, guys, and a sports card guy is going to walk by a Pokemon dealer table and maybe stop at mine. So it's hard because you want to, you don't want to, the hobby shouldn't be exclusionary, but it is in a way. It's two different hobbies, so it's such a fine line, right? That you don't want to talk out of both sides of your mouth. In other words, you don't want to say, "Hey, the hobby's for everyone, whatever you collect," and then start alienating one side over the other potentially, and it's tough. But go ahead, yeah.
No, it's interesting that you say that because we're in a couple group chats with people that run shows or they attend. They're vintage collectors, so they, how vintage collectors feel about modern product. And it's funny. I never go to a show expecting that every table is going to have something for Porter and myself. I mean, when I go to a show, we usually look for bargain boxes, dime boxes, dollar boxes. But
I sometimes look for like memorabilia tables.
Yeah,
get some cheap PC items.
Yeah, and so I don't expect all the tables to be for us. In fact, sometimes when we go to a show, there may only be 5 or 6 dealers that actually have bargain boxes or stuff that would be in kind of our budget range. And I don't have any ill will against, the high-end collectors. Sometimes it's cool to look at. Probably the same thing with the Pokemon. You go in there and you see it. It may not be for you. In fact, we've changed a little bit of the card shows we go to. We used to always go to one show every single month. It was a monthly show. And we just kind of noticed that not that it was getting to be a little bit more Pokemon, but it was becoming really, really new product. And it just kind of felt like the same stuff over and over.
Yeah.
So we found a smaller show that's actually closer to where we live. It's maybe about 50 tables, but I would say it's all sports cards. And
well, there are a few Pokemon.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, you're right. There are a few, but it's like 90-10. And I would say every table probably has good variety of bargain box stuff to wax to higher end stuff and even vintage. And it's a slower pace show. I think that's a big change since the last time we talked. We really liked going to some of the larger shows in the Wisconsin area. And now as we've hobbied for a little bit, some of that's the slower pace. Clearly we still love the national, but I don't know. It just feels like we can have a little bit more time and feel a little bit more relaxed instead of that go show.
Yeah, I get that. I hear you. And the national, like I phrase it as the Super Bowl of the hobby, right? It's once a year. It's 5 days, and so we ramp up for it. But if there was 15 nationals a year, I still probably only go for the one, right, or the 4 or 5 days, right, and then that sort of the bloom when you do anything too much, right, the bloom comes off the rose, as they say. You don't appreciate, you almost take it for granted. When I heard there was a rumor, guys, that they wanted to do 2 nationals a year, and I'm like, no, I know people will attend it. I'm not arguing the financial aspect of it, but we don't need to, right? We have enough other shows and regional shows in Burbank and Madison and more closer to you. And we got the Culture Collision in the South, the Dallas Card Show. We've got a lot of other big shows, East Coast National and White Plains. And now, I know they're sort of different animals, but they have enough similarities to put them in the same basket. You got the Fanatics Fest now as well. So I think there's enough big shows that we don't need 2 nationals. And I think if they ever did it, I think it would hurt each show. I think they would hurt both nationals. And the only way I would support 2 nationals, I'll get your guys' take on this. If one, if they're both good, and I know it's in your backyard, so to speak, but I get the one in national or Chicago, and Chicago's kind of become everyone's favorite venue and place, and sort of, right in the middle of the United States, so it's sort of fair to everybody. But if they ever went to 2 of them, I would say they both can't be in Chicago, and the other one should be on the East or West Coast, to be fair, and it should alternate. So in other words, if you're doing 2 nationals a year, one's always in Chicago, one on the East Coast, and the following year, one always in Chicago and the other on the West Coast, and then alternate And that I still don't really want two nationals, but I'm more apt. Not that they're asking me for my 2 cents, but I could sign off on that before I just say just two nationals wherever or both in Chicago.
Yeah.
But what do you guys think? And that's I know that's a lot closer for you than for me with the Chicago one.
So, sort of like you, I would be opposed to two nationals a year, but I would be fine to do like the alternating cities or states or whatever. That I think would get a little bit more variety of visitors because not everybody can come to the national every year.
We're fortunate, John. As you mentioned, we're about 60 minutes away from the national in Chicago. So the first year we went, which I think would have been 4 years ago now.
Yeah.
We went one day. Everyone said that's not going to be enough time because it is a 5-day show. And then last year we went 2 days, and it was fantastic.
Yeah.
But we can drive there and drive home. If it was even when it was in Cleveland, we wouldn't have gone. But that's just not really how we collect. It's out of convenience being so close here. But I agree with you. I like having the main one in Chicago. But you kind of go where the dealers are and the collectors are. From what I've heard, a lot more dealers are on the East Coast, so it tends to have a little bit more of an East Coast bias.
Yeah.
And then maybe you do have something, that helps some of the folks out on the West Coast. I don't know if it's in Vegas or Denver, but it takes a while to build up some of those things. But at the end of the day, dollars and cents usually speak loudest, and if they can pack an arena. And the dealers see the benefit because they got to see that there's a lot of people coming to this thing. I'm sure, and we met some of them dealers. I mean, their whole year. What is that? The singles club? I mean, that's their show, and they wait all year. And so, if you're a dealer, can you do 2 or 3 of those Super Bowl type shows? And it's kind of that quality versus quantity. Everybody's going to be there for 5 days, and you can maximize it, and it gets all the athletes there and the celebrities and the autographs. We met Dwight Gooden in the parking garage last year, so that was really cool for me. I know you as a Mets, I recognized him right away, and it was like, no way, So you're going to be splitting all that stuff up as well. So I mean, sure, if they need to do something regionally, but I think you have the one main one in Chicago, and selfishly, we would like that.
Yeah, and I don't have a problem with the Chicago one. Now, full disclosure, it does cost me a little more because it's 14 hours to drive, so it's not really drivable. So I'm going to need round trip airfare. Then I usually rent a car. So it's a show that costs me a little more to get to, but I get it. It's centrally located. It's sort of fair for both sides of the coast. You're right, Zach. There's really no statistics to bear it out, but I don't think too many people will argue that there's probably more dealers on the East Coast percentage-wise than the West Coast. But I like the fact that it's in sports cities. So, a city on the West Coast, think could maybe hold a national. It's never done it before, to my knowledge. I'm pretty certain of that. It's Seattle. Seattle now has a hockey team. They obviously have a baseball team with some history, with some great players coming through there as well. They had basketball during the Supersonics days, and
they might get them back now.
Yeah, I'd love to see. Now, I would try to go. It's going to be probably a little more costly, being a little further, but if it's not an every year thing, right? I'm willing to save up during the year to make to make it out there. So, and I think that would be fair for those collectors on the West Coast and maybe a little bit closer guys. And you got to be fair. I could say, have it in Atlantic City, which I don't think they're ever going to get again. But I like the Atlantic City show, guys, for the pure bias that I could drive there.
Yeah.
And bring more stuff and have my own vehicle, and don't have to be at the mercy of an airline when I can leave and when I have to leave. So but you got if you're going to be fair, right, you got to think about both coasts, and then Chicago sort of splits the difference in the middle. So if they ever went the two nationals, I know I've already said this, but if they alternate the coastlines with the second one, if you will, and keep the other one central, I'd more have to sign off on that than just two kind of close to each other, just at two different times a year. So guys, you talked about going to shows. When you go to your show, do you go in with a list of what you're looking for? Like, what's the plan of attack, or you just kind of what you like, something hits you? I know bargain boxes are a big thing too. I like them as well. Kind of, what's your approach when you walk into the showroom?
I sort of have a list when I go to shows. Like, if I'm trying to finish a set, I'll usually try and find and just chip away some at that set. And then, like you said as well, sometimes I just don't have a list and I know what I like and I'm just finding what I'm finding. And that to me usually that usually turns out the best, because then I can open my horizon and get other things that I probably wouldn't have expected to get if I had a list of what I was getting in mind. So yeah, that's my take.
Yeah. So Porter tries to collect the Topps flagship set every year. Usually he'll get a little wax at first, and this is my proud dad moment. He was trying to collect these sets just from ripping wax, and he quickly learned that the budget doesn't necessarily always get you there. So between trading on Trading Card Database and then really, going in and finding somebody's 10-cent 2026 Topps cards, and whether it's TCDB on my cell phone or we'll print off a list on before we go, he can kind of check things off. What my list is actually in Porter's head, because he is so good at remembering what cards we have. So if I go to a show, normally I look for Frank Thomas, Carlton Fisk cards. When I first got back in the hobby, our big project was getting all the base cards for Frank, Carlton Fisk, Bo Jackson, a lot of the cards that I had missed. We got caught up on that. So now it's a lot of newer product with maybe some of the older players. And I'll usually just be like, hey, Porter, do we have this? And he'll look at it, and 9 times out of 10, he'll say, yeah, or no. And usually 99% of the time he's right. What it is an interesting thing that I started doing, and it kind of started with the 1985 Bears. So a few years ago, I don't know if we were doing this project when we last talked to you, we wanted to get the rookie card for every prominent player on the 1985 Bears, -1. We knew we were not going to get Walter Payton's rookie card, but we did go through and get everybody else. In fact, we put it in a cool frame. It's right over there, but it's packed up still through the move. And then what that kind of did was started this project of really looking at rookie cards for kind of my era, like your Eric Davis, your Greg Maddux, your guys like that. And so we had a lot of fun either through trades or going to shows and picking those out. And then we've sort of continued to progress. Like sometimes you find a box of cards and there's Joe Thomas rookie cards in there, or Eric Berry. Football players that obviously Joe Thomas is in the Hall of Fame, but a lot of guys that aren't going to get there, but it's cool to get the rookie card. And so then now we have boxes specifically for rookie cards alphabetically through the sports. And that's been a really fun project for us when we're going out there, because a lot of it's inexpensive base cards. But they mean a lot to us. And so it's pretty cool to find those. And then some of the other cool things you've been doing, let's see, the Tommy John and Ray Guy Topps run.
Yeah. So I collect sort of obscure players, if you will, players that normally people wouldn't collect at all. So now that we're fully moved, I'm going to try and get a Tommy John, Ray Guy, and Jan Stenerud. 2 of those guys are special teamers. They're Topps from. And Jim Abbott, if I don't already have it, which I probably...
You're getting close on the Abbott.
Yeah.
Yeah, listen, those aren't bad guys in their own right? Ray Guy's in the Hall of Fame, arguably the best punter to ever do it. Tommy John is one of those guys. He's on that bubble.
Yep.
You can make, people can make an argument for him, guys, and against them. And some people say, just because he has the surgery named after him, he almost should be
contributor
in the Hall of Fame alone on that. And no one will argue that he was a very, very good pitcher, excellent pitcher. And if he ever does get in, I don't think there'll be a lot of people, that up in arms. I mean, people might say, man, that lowers the bar a little bit. But I believe, I don't have it in front of me, he's not that far from 300 wins.
No.
And I don't know if we're going to see another 300 game winner the way pitchers are used today, as you guys probably well know. So I wouldn't really argue against them. And so I'm not, there's a potential someday we're talking about Tommy John Hall of Famer, but even without that, he's still not a bad guy to collect. Obviously, his cards are very affordable. And again, Ray Guy, no one's crashing the turnstiles to buy punter cards, but if they were, he'd be number one on the list because he's the greatest punter of all time.
Yeah.
So, and Jim Abbott is just an inspirational player and person, and he's still, if you look into what he's still doing, he's still working in baseball in some facets, and I know he does speaking engagements and tells the young folks, like, don't let anything tell you no or that you can't. And he's the perfect example of someone who can say that and has got the goods to back it up. As he was an All-American in high school, he was an All-American in college, and a heck of a pitcher in the big leagues. And that's missing a hand where he'd have to switch the glove after releasing the ball. So I can't even I couldn't do that with two hands, and he's doing it with one. So just again, three great guys, and I think that shows, Porter. To me, it shows that you think about stuff like that, like why him and why them, and that's always important. And it's easy to collect, Ronald Acuna Jr. or guys like that are, big name players, even Mike Trout as he's on the back nine. But to look at those guys a little less prominent, but still have stories and still very important to the fabrics of their sport, right? You can't really tell the story of football without Ray Guy, and the story of baseball without Tommy John and Jim Abbott. And so, regardless of the HOF after their name or not, right? They're very important people and still relevant in the game. Like I said, Jim Abbott's still involved in baseball. Tommy John, I know, coached a little bit after his career was over, and we talk about Tommy John all the time. Maybe not in the way he'd like, but when a pitcher needs that surgery, right? He was one of the first to get that revolutionary surgery at the time, which now is like getting your appendix out.
It's a rite of passage for most pitchers. You have to have it.
Yeah, it's a rarity when a pitcher doesn't have it.
John, you had said something where it tells the story of the game. It kind of reminds me of a good friend of ours, Greg Clark, who does a lot of collecting. We got him a Mitch Trubisky autographed rookie card, and he said, I've wanted one of these. I need one for my collection. And because he said it's part of the Bears history. Yeah. You can't tell the history of the Chicago Bears, good or bad, without that moment in time. And so he wanted to have one, and we were glad we were able to get one for his birthday. But it really made you think, when you collect some of these players, even if they're prospects that don't turn out, which as White Sox fans, we've seen a lot of that over the last handful of years. There's still those memories. It tells that story of that, that time frame of when you're a fan. And so it's funny that you mentioned that, because we look at it the same way. It's all part of that story.
I think it's important, and I'm glad you're sort of keeping, I don't know if I'll call it a tradition, but keeping that aspect of the hobby alive, and others do it too. But I think we need to see more of that, like just, collect what you like, and not always, and for a reason and for a purpose, not always just dollars and cents. And I get that, again, I get that part of it too. I can't say that as a dealer. I'd be hypocritical, but it's got more. It's got to be more than that. And I have people come up to my table and will ask for certain players that I'm probably not going to have out in the showcase, but they might be in one of my boxes that I can pull out and sell it or give it to them in many cases and that sort of thing. So I think it's important because yeah, it's easy to collect the big names, right? But that doesn't tell the whole picture. Those are the big chapters, but all the rest of the chapters are filled in by all those other guys, and especially when you collect a team, like if you mentioned your friend Greg Clark with the Bears, right? That whatever you want to say about Mitch Trubisky, right? He's part of the Bears history.
Yeah.
If someone writes a book about the Bears, that draft and that pick is going to be mentioned. And he wasn't, all his years there weren't bad ones. So there's people forget about that. So I get it. I love to see it. And kudos to you guys for taking that angle. I guess I'll ask Porter this, Zach, but again, you can jump in too because you're right there with him. One of the complaints I hear, and it's legitimate, and it's got, is man the price of the hobby. New waxes. Some of these boxes are coming out at 4-figure levels, and if I'm a kid, I can't afford that. And I don't disagree with that. You can't disagree with that. The proof is in the pudding. And I guess one of the nice things about being old, there's not a ton of them, but I grew up in an era of collecting where packs were quartered. There was no super premium. There was no chrome. I didn't have to sell something expensive to buy some packs or even a box. You could buy a box for, $12, $14, sometimes less. And, I feel like those days are gone. I sort of feel like Topps and the other companies that are going to be producing products still need to make some products that, kids, there's nothing more fun than opening a pack of cards, right? No one will argue that, including myself. But it's getting harder to do that. That's where I'm kind of going. And so I think I know Topps does like the big league and some of the geared to kids. I'd like to see maybe even do a little bit more. But my question for Porter here, as I went off on a little soapbox there, but my question to Porter is, as a kid, and I know you're a teenager now, it's crazy to me, but what do you say to a kid or yourself that maybe is discouraged? Like, hey, I don't know if I want to stay in this hobby. I'm sort of getting priced out. What's your advice either to yourself or a fellow friend or someone that says, hey, man, I'd like to share this hobby with you, but I can't even open a box of cards anymore.
Yeah, I would agree with you. The price of the hobby is getting pretty expensive. And as the years progress, it'll probably get more expensive or less expensive depending on where the supply and demand goes. But some advice, or not just advice, but like thoughts. Maybe for somebody who just likes to collect sets, maybe just step away from ripping wax and opening packs and just try and go to shows and find singles. And then, in my opinion, that would be a better way to put together sets. I've learned that over the years, as Dad said earlier. And that helps. Usually I get the flagship Series 1 and Series 2 done within about a year of it coming out. So I think that going to shows and just getting singles for cheap is a pretty good investment and a better investment than just opening packs all the time.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. I think certainly living through the boom in 2020, 2021, and when I got in 22, like if I wanted to get Porter a pack of cards or something for his birthday, I mean, I couldn't plan on just going to Target or LCS and it would be there. Yeah. I do think that product is much more readily available, which kind of back to the supply and demand comment, it should drive down the cost. I think cards are just like anything in life, you got to get what you can afford, right? You can't go out and buy a flashy sports card if you don't have a flashy sports car budget. So, for a kid, yeah, we've had Porter bring a buddy and go to a show and say, well, what do you collect, right? If you like basketball cards, don't go after Topps Chrome basketball or trying to find autos. Like maybe find a bargain box, a quarter box. If you bring $10, you go walk out of there with some Giannis's or Anthony Edwards. You're not going to get a rookie, but you're going to get some cards of people that you like. And I think we may have touched on this last time, John. I mean, a big part of what's driven up the cost of product is the odds on the side of a pack. It is that near kind of like gambling experience that people have. They just keep driving it up. Where the time that you referenced, when it was 15 quarter packs, you just got the card. Sure, you'd want the Gary Sheffield rookie or something like that, but there wasn't a one-of-one Gary Sheffield that you can get, and so it all stayed, fairly reasonable price. And so it's anytime you're going to have that element where people think that they can get a quick bang for their buck flipping something, it's going to drive the price up. But whether it's eBay, even if you don't have shops that are close to you, or sport lots or trading card database, like you can find the cards you want. You may not go at the speed that you want, but you'll get there. And yeah, it's a good lesson in just life in general. Can't always get what you want.
Yeah, well said on both accounts, guys. And piggybacking off Porter's point, right? Flagship fairly still reasonable. I mean, it has gone up a little bit, but I don't think it's where it's unobtainable. And so you kind of know when it's coming, so you can sort of, it's like when the pitchers and catchers report. If you're a baseball collector, that Topps flagship is very soon to be released. So you kind of save up, right, leading into that, knowing it's coming. And it's a great point you guys both made, right? Going into a show and acquiring singles, which are much more affordable to do in person. You're not paying the shipping to get it to you. You walk in, you get them the same day. Bargain box hunting, right? Dollar box hunting. You see people post their steals and deals. I have a dollar box, and there was a card in there that was $40. Now, truth be told, when I put it in there, it was probably $10, but it went up to $40, and the gentleman found it, and he handed it to me and to not sell it. Like he didn't think it was fair. Like, hey, I found this in your dollar box. It's a $40 card, and he's basically giving it back to me so I would not sell it to someone for $1. I'm like, no, you found it, right? It's $1. Because you're gonna sell that for $1. I'm like, yeah. It wasn't $40 now when I put it in. I don't want to take that much credit, but it was probably $10. And the guy, I can't even remember who it was, but really sort of ramped up and started playing better. And he goes, wow, I can't believe that. Like someone else would take it and say, hey, thanks. And, I'm like, hey, I put it in there. I'm not taking it back back out. He goes, what will you do if I don't buy it for $1 and I walk away? And I'm like, I'll put it back in the box again. He goes, I'll take it. So, it's a great opportunity to find stuff like that. I found I talk about where something was found on me, which is great. I find stuff like that as well when I go to a show as a consumer. I love to do that even at the National. The problem is the Nationals, you're it's like a boxing out for a rebound. You're kind of battling under the boards for box time. But it is a great opportunity to still afford the hobby. It stinks. Yes, I'm not going to argue the fact that it stinks that, not everyone can open Chrome baseball or basketball like they used to. I'm hoping that changes. I don't foresee it. But I also hope Topps and other manufacturers, right, don't lose sight of keeping some items affordable to rip. Because, I think we've all started was ripping that first pack, right? We can tell, we remember which it was. I mean, I've told the story a million times. For me, it was a 1979 Topps baseball pack. I got 3 packs. My grandfather bought them for me in Brooklyn. It was on the front counter, and so I think that it's not everyone's entrance into the hobby, but it's a good percentage of it, and I hope that doesn't go away like that because of pricing structure, and I hope the companies are cognizant enough of that to put things in place to make sure that it kind of stays the case in some form or fashion. I know it won't be like it used to, and times are changing. I get that too. It can't be the old man on the porch, although I still do it sometimes. But I get it. So hopefully, the powers that be keep that in mind. We talked a little bit about the national. It is in Chicago this year. Can I assume that I might get to see you guys there?
Yeah, we'll be there at least 2 days. I don't know if each year we'll go one additional day, but we went from 1 to 2, and I think 3 would probably be our max, just budget wise, and just there's only so much we can do. But last year we had a blast because we met up with Greg Clark and Vince. He's a sports card ripping teacher, really cool channel. He's a teacher. He rips cards and he collects with his kids. And then our buddy Kyle, who it's funny, Kyle's a guy my age. I went to high school with him, known him forever. He was buying cards for Porter and, for like birthday gifts, Christmas. And then just like me, he's going to sports shops where he lives close to Chicago. And he's like, man, I really miss collecting, he's a Brewers fan. I miss collecting Paul Molitor and Robin Yount. So he did the same journey I did. He went back and got all the cards and he started collecting again. And so he comes to the shows with us. And so, yeah, the national, like you said, it's the Super Bowl. The first year we went just to meet people like you or, Topps 85401, like guys like that we've been watching on YouTube forever. And then last year we probably did about 50-50, meeting up with people, doing more shopping. But it's just such a fun time. Community is so great. Just meeting people that, you talk to, text, phone calls, chats, and then you finally get to meet them in the flesh. And never are we disappointed because these people are really super nice, friendly. You meet them in person and even more so.
Yeah, that's good. And we'll kind of close with this. Like you said, maybe with the move you weren't able to get, but you're getting, a couple videos out on your YouTube channel. We hear a lot of the bad stories in the hobby, and we got to talk about them. They're important.
Yeah.
To warn people, so maybe someone doesn't get burnt. I fully believe that. But I always say for every bad story, right, there's 5, 6, 7, 8 good ones. And the hobby community is probably one of the greatest communities in any hobby. We'll kind of close with that and just kind of speak to that in your, since you started, your hobby community has obviously grown as well. Let's just talk about, I know you've given cards to people, people have given cards to you. And it's not just the giving of cards, it's the sharing of information, the sharing of the passion of collecting, that collecting gene. But just talk about kind of the hobby community for you guys.
Yeah, go for it.
I want you to go first.
Okay, I'll go first. I think it's a pay it forward community. We've had the fortunate chance of meeting a lot of people that we've collected with or talked to, whether it's at the national or in person. Even since the last time we spoke, we have a good friend, Cotter. We'll do mailbox trades, right? We'll get racks for each other, just put them in each other's mailboxes. You think about the information. When I came in, I was very skeptical. When I grew up in the junk wax era, I mean, if you went to a card show, you thought that a dealer, they had one goal, and that was to rip you off. And Bo and I joke about this all the time. They were not nice to kids, but then when I took Porter to his first show or first couple, I mean, I couldn't believe the 180. They love seeing a kid in the hobby, and I hope no one takes the wrong way, but like collecting the right way. We always hear that about Porter. He collects the right way. He collects because he loves the cards. He's not, just carrying around the Pelican case, and there's nothing wrong with that, but there's room for both people in the hobby. And so dealers have always seemed to really embrace hey, we just like collecting. That's what we like to do. And we find that, a lot of the content that we watch, Yeah, there's things that get clicks. It's hard not to ignore some of the, scandals that happen in the hobby, but
like the robbery at the National or whatever.
Yeah, or like autographs, any of that kind of stuff. But more the videos we watch are just, hey, learning about how people collect, how they store stuff. One of our favorite things to watch are card room videos.
Yeah.
Somebody walks around their room and shows how they store stuff and all the unique things they picked up, or maybe their kid's baseball jersey from when they were playing. I mean, that stuff's really, really cool. And
I don't like to do that, Zach, because it usually costs me money because I'm like, I got to do that. And then I got to buy all new, like a new case or new protector. So, no, I get it. I'm kidding. You get some great ideas, too.
Yeah. So, I mean, to me, the community, there's always going to be stuff out there that's, gets clicks, but there's a lot more good than bad. And, I'm glad that I was surprised because I came in thinking that everyone's going to be out to get you or no one's going to help you. Even as simple as when I did my first trading card database trade, I didn't know how to send a card through PWE, and somebody walked me through it. And so now whenever I know it's their first trade, I always say, here, I'll send you the stuff first. You can use my material, just replicate it, send it back. It's $1 worth of cards or something.
Yeah.
And it's just little things like that. Everyone does that. Everyone kind of polices each other, and we all love and live in this great community. How about you?
Sort of the same thing that you said. I'm glad that we've been able to make so many friends over the years, collecting and just meeting people and all that great stuff. And yeah, I love watching people and how they store their cards and how they display their stuff. And it really, I like it also because that gives us ideas. Like Greg Clark sort of inspired us to do how we set up our stuff back here now with the new shelving units and having displays and just boxes.
These are Kallax shelves, by the way.
Yeah.
We don't get any money from IKEA, but we talked to 15 different collectors, and every single person was like, "Oh yeah, get the Kallax shelf." And they are perfect for the boxes. 3 rows fit in perfect in there. So yeah. And we learned that by asking a bunch of hobby people, "Hey, what kind of shelves should we get?" Kallax, IKEA, go for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It doesn't even always have to be a card that's gifted, and that's nice. Don't stop doing that. That's not what I'm saying. But it's the sharing of info, right? Hey, get these or get these here, right? They're cheaper here,
yeah.
And that sort of thing, right? To save someone some money, and always important. Just real quick, Porter, as a young man in the hobby. I know sometimes dealers, I'm not one of them, thankfully, never should be that way. I love seeing kids. I usually have some free packs on me that I always will give to young boys and girls that I see at the show when they get close to my table. Do you feel like, for the most part, most dealers are receptive of to you compared to like an adult? Do you feel like you're, someone's asking you, "Hey, buddy, what are you looking for? Who do you collect?" Or do you feel like maybe the dealers maybe are more geared to the adult clientele, if you will?
I've seen dealers over the years that have asked me like, "Hey, what do you like? What do you PC?" Stuff like that, and then they'll maybe help me find some of that stuff in what their inventory. So yeah, most of the dealers, I feel like they have now embraced kids in the hobby, me being one of them, and they're for the most part nice to me at shows and at shops and stuff.
What I think is unique, and we don't sell anything. A lot of the kids that I think dealers sometimes get annoyed with are the kids that come up right away, like, "You buying?" And so I think with Porter, they do, and usually it takes maybe a few minutes. They see that they're, "What are you looking for?" who you collecting? And Porter will talk, well, Jackie Robinson or Ray Guy, like answers you don't normally, hear. It does help too that we collect teams that aren't the, hometown tax here in Wisconsin, right? We're not Packers, we're not Brewers. So usually a guy may have an Eloy Jimenez that he doesn't want to carry around anymore and be like, hey, here you go.
Yeah.
I think that dealers understand that the future of the hobby is always going to be in that next generation. And so if you treat them right, they'll bring kids in. And especially going back to a topic we talked about earlier, the sports card kid. You're competing with the Pokemon dollar as a dealer. So when a kid comes in is excited about sports cards, keep them happy, keep them coming back. And we have our favorite dealers, right? We go back and they're loyal to the people that are nice to us and always, have ways to figure out to do deals. And, it's definitely been much more welcoming than I ever would have thought of. And then the YouTube community, a lot of our channel is sharing mail days, racks, things that people send us, a lot of it geared towards Porter. And sometimes we're just overwhelmed with the generosity and just kindness of people within this community because they like paying it forward because probably someone did it to them when they were getting into collecting.
Yeah, no doubt, guys. And I mean, for me, I'm still obviously a collector. I have a PC, even though I'm a dealer. And I just, I got my start as a 7-year-old kid, right? Like you said just now so elegantly, Zach. The kids are the next ones that are carrying this baton forward. If no one does it, the hobby will suffer. I'm not gonna tell you the hobby will die. That's never gonna happen. But the hobby will suffer if there's not enough people enjoying it, right? And so, I got started in 1979, all those years ago, as a 7-year-old kid, and here I am, 46 years later, right? And so, I love seeing those kids active in the hobby, and because I was one of them, I'm sort of jealous because I can't go back there again. But all joking aside, right? It's important. It's important, and I don't think every dealer really thinks like that. But it's important especially if you're a younger dealer. Like I, I'm in my 50s now. I don't know how much shows I got left as a dealer. But if you're a younger dealer, right, that's more you're going to be your lifeblood, if you will, especially when you're doing it full time. I don't, it's not my full time job, but if you're full time in the hobby and doing shows, right, you should love seeing kids like Porter that are collecting, like you say, maybe in a little different way than sort of we're accustomed to, but sort of the way it used to be. Sort of a throwback. We'll call Porter the throwback, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that's important. I think I don't want to, paint with a broad brush, as I like to say, but I think most dealers get it. That light bulb goes off. There's going to be a few, whether it's short-sightedness, just don't care enough, whatever the reasoning is, might not. And like you guys said, right? You learn which dealers you like and enjoy and who they are, but even besides the cards, right? Who are they as a person, and that sort of thing. And then you'll make your purchasing or trade decisions a lot of times based on that. And that's how it should be as consumers, right? We have good experiences. We go back. We have a good meal at a restaurant. We're more likely to go there down the line and eat again, right? We don't. We're probably like, I don't want to eat there anymore, So it's the same thing like in cards and shows and dealers, right? We sort of get to know who does it right, who cares, if you will, and that's important. And it's good to hear you. That and the hobby community, like you guys said, is a tremendous one. And they always say, don't meet your idols, and I think that's more towards athletes. But like you said, you talk to someone online or you get to know them online, and then hopefully you meet them in person and they're the same person. And a quick story, and someone met me. I don't know. This was a couple years ago at the National, And, we talked for like 20 minutes. And at the end, they were shaking my hand like, oh my God, you're just like you are on your podcast. And I laughed and I said, I got to ask you, like, what did you expect me to be like? Because I was like, to me, I'm just myself. Like, there's no,
Yeah.
like, it was a weird, I get why after talking with him, I go, but I'm like, well, what did you think I was? I'm not a celebrity. I'm not Brad Pitt. Like, I wasn't going to big time, like what he goes, well, I think some, I don't want to speak for everyone. I've met a couple, online hobby content creators. And when I met them, they were a little bit different and short and curt and, okay, I got to go, and you weren't like that. I'm like, I never will be like this. What you see is what you get. Sometimes that's not always like you get this ugly mug on YouTube. Sometimes that's not always a good thing. But like, I've never been like, but the comment really kind of caught me off guard because I wouldn't know how to be otherwise, right? I remember I was raised by my grandparents, guys, and my grandfather from a very early age said, if you be yourself, you never have to pretend to be anybody else. And he also had another line. He'd say, if you never lie, you never have to remember the truth. So, little things. It's funny because you take them to heart more as you get older. You hear them when you're a kid and you get it. I don't want to make it like I didn't get it, but it makes all the more sense as you get older. And so, and I've gotten that more than once where people say, man, you're just like I hear you and how you are there. And I'm like, well, that's me too. Like, if there's another guy on my show, maybe that'd be different. But but I guess some people are maybe different in person than they are online, and that's not going to be my MO, and and that's not even a hobby thing. That's just in general in person with I'm a teaching assistant, so I work in a high school with kids, and so I'm going to be that down to earth guy for everyone across the world. At least I hope to be. And so and that always surprised me when someone says that, but I get a chuckle out of it, and we usually both parties do, and they're like, well, it's very refreshing. I'm like, well, I hate to bore you, but the next time we meet, it's going to probably be the same thing. So, but guys, I appreciate you making some time. I know you, like you said, with the recent move and stuff, I know you're busy. As always, I give the guests the final word, where people can see what you're doing, your YouTube channel. Take your time, share all that stuff.
All right. Well, thanks, John. It's pretty simple. We do a YouTube channel, Zach and Porter, AND. And I think when we first were on your show, we maybe had just been about a year in.
No, it was only a few months.
Yeah, only a few months or so. I definitely, if you're newer to the hobby and you like Sports Card Nation, you clearly want to learn more. We have a great collection, or a great group of collectors that hang out on our channel and watch our videos. You can see in the comments and find other things. That's how we find other people. You look through the comments, people look the same way. We open up a lot of just mail days, things we find at card shows. We're not ripping any wax. We're just sharing a lot of stories about the hobby. And sometimes, we'll do something unique for one of our PCs, but definitely can reach out to us there. We've even met a lot of people and done trades through our channel as well. So Zach and Porter on YouTube. And yeah, John, thank you so much for having us back. I guess we didn't totally do a ratings bomb for you that first time. You decided to have us back. Oh, John, I think you're quiet for a second.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't have. Here's the thing. Most of my shows, I'm blessed now doing this 8 years. I built up a following, thankfully. Didn't start out like that in the first year, but since then it's really ramped up here in year 8. So most episodes get 4-figure downloads. I'm very appreciative of that. It's humbling. I don't take it for granted. I say that all the time, right? Like I'd be talking to myself without you folks out there. So that's not lip service. That's from the heart. And I don't have people on. That's the other thing that, it's always nice to have, an actor like Dwyer Brown from Field of Dreams or
Yeah.
a CEO, right? But I don't have people on just because I necessarily know, like, hey, that might get more downloads, and I get it. Some people check that box, right? For me, this hobby encompasses everybody, right? From low level to high levels, everywhere in between. And without all of us right there, again, the hobby it's that telling the history, right? We need all those facets to put that puzzle together. So if you look, we've had over, I think we're approaching almost 300 different folks. I've been on the show, and that's kind of scary when I think about that. That's how many, and
You know what my favorite
all
was?
walks
John?
of life, right? Male, female, corporate, not corporate, authors, artists, collectors, dealers, promoters.
The thumbs
You
down
know,
guy. That was my favorite one.
that was funny.
That was
That
my
was
favorite
funny.
episode.
And listen, sometimes here's a great example. There's someone, he doesn't really collect cards, but
No.
he's a fellow Mets fan.
Yeah.
And much like me, he doesn't shy away from complaining when there's reason to complain. He became a viral sensation for what he did on a televised game. And he
Yeah.
was great just to pick his brain and talk to him about, and like he said on the show, like he didn't do that to get any sort of notoriety. It just kind of came
Just
with the
happened.
territory.
Yeah.
And
Let's see if I can.
he's like, I'm
This guy.
not any different.
Oh.
Yeah. It was a home run, right? The Mets.
Yeah.
Yeah. Against the Yankees.
So,
today.
and just a really cool Gary Denier is his name, by the way. So, and just a cool moment, I had Dwyer Brown on from Field of Dreams. He played in the movie, played Kevin Costner's ghost father coming back. And as a dad, I don't know if I'm assuming you guys have seen the movie.
Oh yeah, of course.
I've seen that movie.
Oh,
I don't know
yeah.
how many times. That scene, like I'm like a little baby, like every single time. I know what's coming, and it still just hits you it still just hits you that way. If you're a dad or a son, that's what's going to happen. And just one of my favorite movies and one of my favorite scenes from a movie. And like he'll tell you, he made a whole career from a 1 minute scene in a movie. He's got a new book out, which I'm in the process of reading, and the book's about fathers and sons and the relationships. And in the book, he tells stories of people coming up to him in public and saying what that scene meant to them, or how they had lost maybe a dad and it made them reminisce, or maybe a son and father had a falling out, and that scene caused them to pick up the phone.
That's great.
And say, "This is dumb. Let's squash this and get on the same page again." So, I'm and some of the shows I've done, guys, and I know we're going a little overtime here, but even though I've had my dad on twice to talk about growing up at Ebbets Field and in Brooklyn and meeting the Jackie Robinsons and the Duke Schneiders and the Pee Wee Reeses and those guys. And, it wasn't my most talking about downloads, not my most downloaded show, especially at the time, but probably one of my most impactful, because I got so many emails and DMs, Zach and Porter, that say, hey, hearing you reminisce and your dad getting choked up, thinking about his youth and growing up in Brooklyn and hearing those great stories that you just can't get from anyone, right? Those, my dad's generation, unfortunately, still around, thank God, but he's 88. The generation is going away. And so those stories and connections with players of that era, those are going away too, other than, on what's captured on video or written. And so to have them on and talk about that, I got a lot of feedback saying, hey, hearing you talk with your dad, I called my dad right after listening to your show. Or me and my dad had an argument, hadn't spoken in 2 years, and hearing you talk to your dad I'm like, this is dumb. What we're mad at each other about in the grand scheme of things is silly. I'll blink first. I'll call. And I remember sharing that with my wife, some of those messages, and she was a little taken back. Like she's not a card person, or she doesn't listen to the show. She's supportive as a wife, but when I showed some of those messages from the show with my dad, she goes, "Really?" Like I'm like, "Yeah, I'm as kind of shocked a little bit too, or humbled by it as well." So you never know. I always say this, guys, and this goes for anybody's content, right, including your YouTube channel. You never know who's listening, who's watching, and what impact you might actually be making. And and for the 4 or 5 messages I got with my dad's appearance, and maybe there was 4 or 5 even other ones that did something, but didn't let me know about it. So
Yeah.
always be wary that your content could be making a difference. And even if it's as simple as, hey, I love Zach and Porter, they make me laugh. I love seeing a father and son share a hobby, share moments, right? Even if it's that, you bring a smile to someone's face. You can't put a price. You can't put a price on stuff like that. And so, someone asked me once, like, do you profit from your podcast? And I'm like, I make money. I still have to go to work, during the week. But I get more out of those kind of feedback moments where someone says, love the episode. It caused me to do this, or reconnect with this, or you saved me. I was about to do something, but listening to you, I realized I was going to get in trouble. And you say that stuff, you can't put a price on those sort of things, guys. And so to anyone, including you guys, right, you make that creates that content. You should never lose sight of that, because it's important, and you never know, as they say. So, guys, thank you. Well, listen, we'll have you back. It won't be 4 years next time, but next time we'll have you back. Porter will probably be taller than both you and Isaac.
Yeah, probably.
But guys, thank you. Keep up what you're doing. We talk about hobby community. You guys are great examples of doing it the right way, and keep going.
We appreciate that. Thank you for having us on, John.
Thank you, John.